I want to ignite a passion and a curiosity and a sense of learning about this game that gets them fired up. So they might, like before you even, because I ask a lot of questions of players as I teach, but before I even do, sometimes players will say, now, why did you have us do this? Or why'd you have us curl this cut versus, coming off this side? I love that. I invite that. And so I think, again, as coaches and teachers and leaders, we help to create that environment by encouraging those questions and getting excited about them, looking somebody in the eye, or maybe a shoulder touch or a fist bump, saying, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. Now let's explore that, versus saying, because I said so, because that's the way the offense is set up. I think you can kill someone's curiosity and passion for learning, or you can ignite it. And I choose to do the latter.
Welcome to the Monotony podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Monotony, just a matter of doing it.
Today we're joined by the Director of Player Development for Michigan State University women's basketball program, Dean Lockwood. Coach Lockwood is in his 43rd year of coaching. In his 12 years as head coach, he spent 6 seasons at Northwood University and 6 at Saginaw Valley State University. He was named the GLIAC Coach of the Year in 1997. In his 15 seasons as an assistant coach at Tennessee, the Lady Vols were 2-time national champions and 3-time Final Four attendees. He's coached 27 WNBA draft picks and 6 NBA draft picks. Coach Lockwood has been a part of 18 NCAA tournaments. In 2023, he was selected for the Step Up Assistant Coaches Hall of Fame, making it his 3rd Hall of Fame. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Monotony Podcast.
Yes, sir. There he is.
All right. We're operational.
How are you?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm good. Thank you so much for making the time to do this, talk hoops with me. I'm honored to have this time with you.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I love it. I'm going to have fun. This is going to be fun. I always enjoy this. So good to talk to another guy who loves the game.
Yes, sir. And I want to really give the credit for us getting to meet and talk together to Coach Boone. Yep. Anytime that he says this is a guy that you gotta talk hoops with. I mean, that's high praise in my book.
Well, it is. Jim's a great guy. He's a great coach, and he's another one. He's one of us. He's one of us lifers, and he loves it. He's sick for it. He loves it.
That's right. You can definitely feel that when you get to talk to him, and then he does such a great job with his program, using social media with it. Like he's one of the best.
Yep. No question.
How did workouts go today?
Good. Had good ones. We're going to give them a couple days to just kind of step away. We've got a couple kids that have scheduled individual just shooting sessions, but we're going to lay off for a couple days and then go at it hard on Thursday.
That hard for you to do? Are you ready just to get going, or do you feel like it's a good break for them and it's a nice little refresher time for you to get ready to go?
Yeah, no, I don't mind it at all. In fact, as you might imagine, we've still got stuff like tomorrow I'm going to be in here I've got a couple kids that want to shoot. And then there's a couple just things that you got to do that we're doing a staff photo thing and all that. So there's little things that you have to do. So yeah, it doesn't bother me. And I actually think it's healthy and it's good to kind of step away. I think it's healthy.
I feel like it's the same with high school coaching as well. I mean, they hear my voice 186 days of the year. And then as soon as the summer hits, I'm like, golly, I gotta see him. I gotta get him in the gym. And almost freaking out about the time that I'm losing or missing out with them. But time away is good. One coach said we really want them to get to the point where they miss us again. I think that's a good way to look at it.
No doubt. Well, I remember the old days. I'm old enough to, I've been around where, now you've got access to them all summer. And I remember where you couldn't have any access. And I remember something Coach Wooden said. Now, again, obviously he was coaching some pretty good players. They had not only his starting 5, but he could probably go down his bench to get 9, 10, 11, and 12 and be pretty good players. But I remember he said, I just think it's healthy for them to be away for a stretch and to do other things. I think it gives them balance and it's healthy. And And again, I think there's a happy medium and all that, but I've never been opposed to that either. I think it's a good thing.
Where do you think maybe that feeling of I need to have them more, we got to keep working? I think coaches sometimes promote the grind, just as much as anybody you see on social media or trainers do. Where do you think that feeling of, I've got an idea, but I'd love to kind of hear what you think?
Well, I do think, and this is something over time, Matt, that I know I have learned, and I think I've grown. It's kind of like during a season, right? I know this as a young head coach, because I was a Division II head coach on the men's side for 12 years. And I think in my early years, you're always fighting that thought of, man, it's not enough. It's not enough. We got to do more. We're not prepared yet. Oh, let's run through this a couple more times. Oh, yeah. Oh, wait a minute. They're going to press. So let's do press offense for another 5 minutes. Oh, wait a minute. Let's go over their out of bounds play that they've scored on. Oh, wait a minute. And there's a point where you overload the circuits. I really believe that. And, Coach Meyer, and Coach Boone is a big Coach Meyer guy. There's so many of us. There's fewer now, but there's still so many of us out there by legions that are Coach Meyer disciples and whatever you want to call us. But, he used to say sometimes less is more, and more games are lost by overcoaching than undercoaching. And I think sometimes, I know over the course of time, Matt, I've realized that, hey, I remember one thing. I'll tell you this. Pat Summitt, when I joined the Lady Vols in 2004, I was coming off my 6th year at Saginaw Valley State. And I remember being shocked is too strong a word, but I remember saying to myself a couple times as I was walking back to my office after practice, man, is she so much smarter than me? I mean, I knew that a long time ago, but I sometimes would think to myself, I know I killed guys at times. I probably killed their legs. Pat was so big on getting them off the floor early, a day before the game, and saving their legs. And so again, to your initial question, I think sometimes as coaches, we're fearful that we haven't prepared them enough. And I think we take that personal. We look at it, it's a reflection on us personally as coaches. Yeah. Oh, we don't ever. The worst thing you can say to a coach who loves the game is his team is unprepared or his team doesn't play hard. That's exactly right. Those are cardinal sins to hear about your team. And I think we fear that. And sometimes we forget that, you know what, these players, they're the ones playing the game. Yeah. And if we keep them on the court too long, and if we're grinding, I remember a couple of times being on the road, and I certainly won't name names, but I'd be on the road in July, and a coach would tell me, this happened to be a head coach, and they'd say, yeah, I'm going to fly home, and tonight I got a private plane, or I'm going to catch a late night flight because we have a 6:30 a.m. workout tomorrow, and it's the middle of July. And I'm just going, why? Now, again, maybe you have a team that maybe needs to learn discipline and some toughness, and I'm not anti that at all, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is sometimes we over promote that, and we can overdo. I think as coaches, I know I'm going to own this personally. I know at times I was very guilty of overdoing and probably taxing my players physically and mentally, where I could have lightened up and they probably would have gotten more from them.
So many great points. I appreciate you mentioning the fear aspect or the worry of not being prepared. And I think even now with social media being in such a big way where you used to almost wonder what others were doing. As a coach, you'd tell your team, hey, nobody works as hard as us. Nobody does what we do. Well, we were kind of just guessing at that point. And now people do so, and we do it, Coach. Like, we put stuff on our workouts. Like, it's not hard to know what we're doing at Grapevine Faith Christian School. If you just go, so you see those things, and remember, like coaches, we have to remember that just like we tell our players not to compare. Comparison is the thief of all joy. To be careful of what you look on social media, because everybody's putting out the best part of themselves. Not many people are airing all the issues and things. So we can start to look at these programs like, golly, they've got a lot of dudes in the gym. like they're working on shell drill right now. We haven't done shell in 4 months, and it's but the fear of kids deal with the fear of missing out. I think as coaches, we got to be careful of the comparison trap and remembering kind of what you said is that it's not that we're under coaching, it's that we're over coaching. That's a great nugget.
No, for sure. And your point is well taken too, because there, with technology being what it is today, there are so many more avenues to view other programs. And you can't help, if you're watching this stuff, you can't help but kind of wonder at times or say to yourself, are we doing enough, or should we be doing this? And I think, you know what, you can be, at the end of the day, you can be like a dog chasing its tail. You can go that can take you off course or in so many different directions. And I think at the end of the day, and that's why it's important, Matt, to have a philosophy, to have a plan, not to say that you won't ever adapt or adjust or alter that plan. But I think you have something that you and your staff have talked about, and based on who your team is, where your team is, what your team needs, you take that plan and implement it, and you stay the course. And, regardless of what other people are doing, I just think that's very, very important. And I think it breeds confidence within your team and your program. But I also think it can take us as coaches, it can be very distracting even when you're looking at so many other things that you become, your eyes are off your team and you're starting to wander and look at all this other stuff. Well, you're not exactly dialed in to maybe being the very best for your team. So it's a very slippery slope, and it can be dangerous. I wouldn't say, oh gosh, don't ever look at it, but I would tell you this, for me as time, and I'm an older guy, so I'm not a social media, oh gosh, I live on it. I've always felt more confident, comfortable by doing less examining of what other people are doing than more.
I think the idea of the art of coaching comes up quite a bit. And maybe a part of that art of coaching, like you said, Coach Summit had, was the ability, you can be ultra prepared, but never allow yourself room to deviate or go off of feel. Yeah. You can go all off of feel and have no plan. And then you might be the guy, like you said, chasing his tail, not having any direction or identity with what you're doing. And then you become maybe a jack of all trades, but a master of none. Right. It seems like maybe the art of it is preparedness, but then feel, and then that allows you to make those reads like she would, like other great coaches. I had Coach Starkey on, and we had an awesome hoops talk, and he's talking about Coach Mulkey as amazing practice plans, but then the ability to read her team and to see what they need on that day and to pivot when they need. That to me, that's the art of it.
I agree. There is an art to that, and there's a feel. You said the word, and we use this all the time in talking about players having a feel for what's needed. Maybe something is needed a little bit more, or there's something that's a little less. Knowing that, and sometimes that might be on the spot. That might be a battlefield decision. You're in the middle of practice, or even in a game, and you say, wait a minute, we're going to have to alter this. So I'm all about preparation, don't get me wrong, but I think one of the things about preparation is, and this is kind of, I know this opens up another area, whatever, but scouting sometimes, right? You can spend so much time looking at an opponent that you're overlooking some of your own shortcomings, flaws, weaknesses, however you want to call it, or maybe even your own strengths that you want to build up. And again, I think there's always, that great Coach Wooden he said the two most important words in the English language is love and balance. And so going to the second one, balance, there's a balance. There's a happy medium. Yes, I want to know what my opponent is doing and what they're running and what their tendencies are, what their best players do and how we stop them. Yes. But I don't want to become so preoccupied with that we've missed planning and preparing ourselves and being the best version of what we can be. So I think that's true in what you're saying in the social media piece and looking out there. I certainly, and again, for me, the off season, that's maybe when you pick a couple programs. I want to really take a deep dive and study this or this particular coach. Man, does she ever do this well? Or do they do this well? I want to really watch that. That's my time to take a deep dive. But as we're moving forward now and preparing, I don't want to become so encumbered by another team or another program that I feel like I'm not giving maximum to the one I'm at.
I do feel like we're going to hit that topic right there even more throughout our talk. But you mentioned Coach Meyer's name a few times already, and I can't tell you, Coach, how many leaders and coaches have referenced him in the 2.5 years I've been doing this.
I can
Unfortunately, yeah, as a 41-year-old that's been doing this for 16 years, I was, by the time I got serious in this, but early on, I feel like I was just staring like at what's right in front of me. And I wasn't at the place where I could reach out and kind of go back and learn about some of those giants in the profession. And so I missed out on some of that time with him.
Yeah.
For guys my age or younger, what would your advice be on, like, how do we learn about Coach Meyer? Where do we go? What should we read, watch, do? And besides just Google them and, find some stuff, if you have anything specific.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I'm sure Bob could tell you a lot about that, because Bob was a guy that did a lot of stuff with Coach as well. And Jim did as well. That's where I first met Bob and Jim. We were together. In between, I had just worked the college camp, and Coach Meyer used to have the college camp and then the coach's academy. And it would be in between the college camp, the academy, and then his other camps. So there'd be a little gap in between where a bunch of coaches would gather and literally have a mini clinic, talking basketball, whatever. And it was in his house that I met those two guys. But yeah, I think for me, because I so much in the early years were the coaching academies, the camps, and the informal clinics. I think he does. I know he still does have a website, coachmeyer.com. You can pick up a lot of his nuggets and his handouts and a lot of wisdom there. I even think that they've got some notes and things that he's done over the years. Certainly the book, How Lucky Can You Be by Buster Olney, gives you some insight into Coach Meyer. And I think, honestly, it's kind of like, and again, this shows you my old school nature in spirit in so many ways. But generations ago, how were things passed? Long before we had social media, long before we had television even, or how were things passed along? They were passed along from various villages and tribes and cultures by mouth.
Yeah.
By people, men and women who experienced things, and they would hand it down to the next generation. They would share that. So I would say, talking to coaches who experienced some of that and really could give you some, I've got mounds of stuff that from Coach Meyer's clinics and academies, and I still reference it, not as much as I probably should, but every so often I'll pull out an academy notebook and say, oh man, I remember this was Roy Williams and Don at the academy. Oh, here's a Rick Majerus. Here's when Pat came to the academy. So I just think as much as you can, the website, his website, I think will have some stuff, and you can still get his DVDs, and I think they're streamed now.
Yeah,
so you can still get those. And he's, to me, still one of the best teachers of the game that ever was, ever on any level. Don taught the game. And so, yes, you can get stuff there, but then I think also seeking people out who were able to experience that firsthand. And I know most of us, if not all of us, are very willing to share.
What's up, Coach? Are you looking for a way to elevate your off-season skill development? Well, look no further. With the Ballogy app, you can build a workout with our library or create your own content. Send that workout to your players, and then your players complete the workout by recording their session on their phones. You can monitor and encourage competition with our leaderboards for every workout. Ballogy offers player development solutions in the palm of your hands. Get your team started today by going to ballogy.com for more info.
Things borrowed. And I think you've already mentioned so much about Coach Meyer and his willingness to share. And I think that is something I love about the coaching profession, is that there hasn't, in getting to do these hoops talks, there's been nobody that said no, and nobody that was just holding on to everything, very willing to share. But what are some of the best things that you've borrowed lately?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll tell you, most recently, what came to mind when I actually saw your list, and I got to say this, I was very fortunate, Matt. I got invited this past summer to work Damian Lillard's Formula Zero camp out in Phoenix for NBA guys. This was their second year for high school and college guys, and I can't do that I'm bound by NCAA rules. I can't work with high school players off campus at all. But I was kind enough to be invited. Phil Beckner, his workout guy. Phil's a great guy and also an incredibly sharp guy, one of the best workout guys out there for my money. They invited me to the camp for a couple of days, and Phil told me this before the camp. He said, you're coming out here to work, and we want you to work, but I think when you leave, you're going to feel like your tank got filled up a little bit too. And he was dead right. There were so many things out there, little things that I learned, but here are some of the big things. Is number one, we had 17 NBA guys or guys that either been in camp, G League guys, or that were on current rosters. Damian Lillard was at every session. It was his camp. He didn't walk around in flip-flops. He didn't walk around with a bottle of Gatorade and different. He was in every session going full throttle.
That's big time.
One of the things, watching that and just being around that for a couple of days, and I've told our players this year over the years, the elite players that I've been fortunate to coach over the years that have been drafted or had professional careers, the elite ones think differently and they do things differently. And so one of the things that I brought back from that is part of that whole experience. And the formula, by the way, is character, hard work, and accountability. And one of the things that I love is that they were so big in telling these guys the truth and doing it in a caring way. But at the same time, I think a lot of times today, we live in a world now where accountability and discipline are almost bad words.
Right.
And they're not. They're the highest forms of caring. And we don't hear that enough, and we don't see that enough. So one of the things that I brought back, so important, at any point in that camp, and we were kind of told in the staff meeting prior to camp starting, we want you guys to pour into these guys and tell them the truth. If their footwork's wrong or bad on a rep, tell them. If they're not going at a tempo that you think they need to, tell them. And I think that is it. And I say that it's not like it's new or revelational, but I think one of the things that I brought back, it was just a reinforcement that players want and need to be told the truth at all times. And sometimes, there are players that certainly have a hard time hearing it. And I don't think you have to drop everything like with a hammer or a sledgehammer or blow up a room to do it. But it's so important for players to hear truth, gut level truth about how they can get better. One of the slogans of that formula that I love so much, we want nothing from you and we want everything for you. And I think that's such a powerful thing to convey and then to live out when you're coaching and teaching players at any level. We want nothing from you, but we want everything for you. So again, I think that was something that I came in. And then from, a technical standpoint, I'll tell you what, last year we had a player that was really good off some catch and shoot screen actions. And I went back. I couldn't remember the play, but I remember Bob McKillop. I watched the DVD, and then I'd also seen some clips. He did a clinic on an out of bounds play, and we stole that play and implemented it. And it was really, really good for us. So in terms of, there's something I gave you first something of the intangibles of the game. And that was something tangibly that I borrowed most recently from Coach McKillop, who I think is, again, a great coach. great. I remember hearing about him when he was a high school coach on Long Island. And guy that I worked camps with, Stan Kellner, used to say Bob McKillop's one of the best coaches on the island, hands down. And, obviously went to Davison, had a great career. Yeah. But we borrowed his out of bounds play, and it was very effective for us.
You mentioned the discipline and accountability. And as soon as you said, I thought, man, those are two words that just don't seem to be very popular in our culture anymore. I think you nailed it. So, but you're right. I think in what we're doing with players, both of those are really necessary. But I think what allows us to continue to bring discipline, to tell them the truth, is about the relationship, because I think the relationship dictates how we say it. Absolutely. Where I had coaches that I was blessed to have great coaches at every level. One of my college coaches, my first one, it was the same message to all of us, no matter who we were. The problem with that is I could take it and crave that. I had some more talented teammates that wanted no part of that type of message.
Yep.
And I think that is a place maybe where communication and obviously guys like Coach Meyer, they're probably doing that back then. But the awareness is up of meeting players where they are, still communicating discipline and accountability, but the right way and the right tone for them.
Oh, absolutely. And you nailed it to start that, when you opened up on this particular area, Matt. I don't think you can coach anybody and not have a relationship at some point with. Now, obviously, going back to that Formula Zero experience, I was out there for 2 days, but even in those 2 days, we shared meals together.
Yeah.
We sat in meeting rooms. So we did develop
That's also level. A different, because I've worked PGC camps for years. We basically all start out with the idea of we don't know each other, but I'm going to tell you the truth in what I see. Yes. And we start with that baseline, knowing that, from the kid's perspective, if you don't like me, I'm gone in 3 days. You don't have to deal with me anymore. That's the big difference, in my opinion, between seeing your players every day, knowing you're going to see them again. We're going to see them in a month. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And the whole point that I was making there is, regardless of the time frame you have, in some way, shape, or form, you have to communicate that you care about them. Yeah. And again, that's why I like that thing. We want nothing from you and everything for you, which basically, and again, I don't want to open this up yet. We can hit that another day or another time or part of this thing. But to me, the ultimate form of leadership is servant leadership.
Yeah.
Leaders serve. A true leader, a great leader, serves the people around them. And that's one of the things I think you can convey both verbally and non-verbally to players. One of the things, Pat, and she didn't obviously create this, but she was so good at living this out. And she certainly said this at times, and we've heard this dozens of I can't remember who the originator of this was. It really doesn't matter. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that is so true. And another one that I got from Family Life Radio years ago: rules without relationships result in rebellion. Before you can lay rules or things on people, or discipline or accountability, before you can coach someone and really kind of get into them in a positive way, they have to know that you care about them. They have to know that you want their best, both for them and from them. And two tenets I've always lived by, and if you say, give me two things that are the underpinnings or foundations of your teaching. One is you love players unconditionally and you tell them the truth all the time. And I think if they know that you care about them and that you do want their best from them, but you are going to tell them the truth, you're not going to allow them to not be good or to take a shortcut or to do something incorrectly. Again, letting them know that because I love you, I'm going to hold you accountable to high standards. I see excellence in you. I see so much more in you, and I want that from you. And having the discipline piece and saying, I love you enough to tell you that this is not okay. I care for you enough that I want to jump in the way of you and this thing that you're going to do that's going to create a problem for you. And I think, again, in today's world, in our society, sometimes we've gotten so mixed up that we've lost the value of those things. But yes, the whole foundation of being able to teach or coach anyone is the relationship piece, because without a genuine, authentic relationship with your people, I don't think you can effectively coach or teach for any length of time. You might be able to insert little bits and pieces, but if you're going to expect and want and demand the best from them every single day, they have to know that you care about them. And I don't care if you're a coach, a teacher, a platoon leader, a business owner. I think that has to be in place.
That phrase that you said a few times, nothing from you, everything for you. Golly, I wonder how many players feel the opposite of that. They feel like their coaches, teachers, whoever, they want everything from them, but then nothing's for them. Nothing's given to them.
Yep.
And I think that is a maybe to take a pulse of, or how to know that your culture in your program, I said the culture word in your program is heading in the right direction. Do your players feel like that you want everything for them?
Yes.
And not just constantly, the idea of always withdrawing, but never depositing into their account. I think that would be I don't know how you take that to get like a pulse of your team, to figure out how do you guys feel this is going for you? Do you feel like we as our coaching staff, we want everything for you and that we don't want things from, I don't know that.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly a good question to ask. And I know this too. There are times when I've asked players, how can I be better for you? How can I coach you better? How can I be more effective? I tell you, there's a player when I first got here, and I asked her that probably 3 or 4 times in her time here. It's like, I feel sometimes that I'm not as effective for you, or not I'm not at my best for you to get you to be your best. How can I do now? I'm not going to certainly compromise standards. If they were to tell me, well, you know what?
I don't want you to make me run as much. Right?
Yeah, I don't want to do any of those extra workouts. I just want to show up. Well, obviously, I can't give on that. But honestly, in terms of a relational piece or a communication piece, that's the sense I ask. And you said something else that triggered this question that I've asked myself at times, Matt, over the years. And I think it's important for all coaches to be able to ask this of themselves and have enough self-awareness and have enough courage to be gut level honest to what you might think, or even ask others, what does it feel like to be coached by me? How does it feel to be coached by me? What does that feel like? Do our players feel challenged? Do they feel encouraged? Do they feel loved? Do they feel that they are held to high standards? I would hope that all those things are in place, but I think it's important. We ask players all the time to think about what they're doing, and are you
evaluate? Yeah.
I think we need to hold ourselves to those same standards. Nowhere is it written that coaches can't be held accountable either. And again, I think it starts with ourselves and maybe somebody on our staff, but certainly players who have earned it. Now, again, I might not ask somebody who's just, I don't think is going to, they're not playing hard every day. And I've got to challenge them to do more or play harder. But somebody that I really respect and they're giving everything they have every day, I might ask them, hey, how does it feel to be coached, by me? Are you getting what you need? Is there something I can do better, do more of? And again, I'm going to take that. Certainly, I'm going to respect it, but I'm also going to take that through a filter and say, again, where are they coming from? What are they saying? And weigh that. But, another thing that came to mind as you said this, Matt, there's a great book, Inside Out Coaching by Joe Ehrmann. He talked, you have that on your shelf?
It's on my to-do list, and I got to pick it up.
Tremendous book. And one of the themes in that book is transactional coaching or transformational coaching. So for instance, a transactional coaching, you're a point guard. Hey, we need you to bring the ball up. We need you to pick the ball up full court. We need you to be a distributor and hit the open shot. And man, whatever else, I really don't much care about what else is going on.
And if you don't do it, we'll just,
we'll get
on.
somebody else,
Yeah.
as opposed to, okay, that's me defining your role. And those things are important for our team to win. But Matt, I also want to know what you think. Yeah. I want to know how you feel the game. I want to know what you see. Maybe we'll watch film together. I want to know what you see. I'm not just going to be pointing things out to you and saying, hey, do this, do that, go here, go there. I'm going to be saying, Matt, what did you see here? Or what were your thoughts? You made this pass. What were you thinking there? What did you see in that moment? Or who on our team, Matt, do you think right now you could really help elevate their game? So at the end of the day, we're trying to build the person in addition to building the player. And that's the transformational part of coaching that after 41 and a half years, I still love it so much. I'm still passionate about it because in addition to building the player, you're building the person. And it's that old thing again, and I love this phrase, we're planting trees under whose shade we may never rest, but we're building other people up for a future. I may long be in the ground, but maybe somebody I'm coaching today, when they're 63 years old, can have an impact on someone else in a way that is meaningful and significant. And, by that stage, I'll long be in the ground. Mm-hmm. But again, I've hoped to have planted a tree under whose shade I may never rest.
But especially when dealing with players and helping them to change behaviors, not just on the floor, off the floor. Coach, I feel like we approach them as if that's not the way that growth happens. We want the change to be instant in them. And I almost feel like at times that I'm a failure when in the course of a season or maybe even a player I've had for 2 or 3 years, he's still making mistakes that, we've talked about, we've worked through it. I've spent one-on-ones with this guy. We've got to remind ourselves of that idea of we're planting seeds and the odds of us seeing the fruits of that labor, they're small. Maybe we're lucky enough to get that text message 4 or 5 years later from that player out of the blue that says, you know what? I got it. It took me a long time. Those are those coaching paychecks that we're waiting on. But I feel like what a great reminder that in the same way that their shot changes in their mechanics, changes in their mentality, does not change overnight. And it takes a long, long time. Changes in their mindset, literally their character, the decisions that they make. Those aren't instant either.
No,
but that doesn't mean that we just say, well, then next person's problem. We just keep planning and we keep. I like that. I like the word hope. Their hope that at some point in their lifetime, something clicks with them, and it happens.
Absolutely, no question. And we would all, and I think that's part of the things that we fight as coaches, is that we're always not very patient. We want things when we want them. We as leaders, we see the big picture. We see what we want our team to be and to play like. And we see this particular player and what they need to play like. They're a very important cog in the wheel. So we need them to play this way in order for the mechanism to run at optimum level and optimum efficiency. So we become impatient at times when we don't see that, and that's natural. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think we have to temper that with the fact that we're dealing with human beings. It'd be nice to be able to punch a button or swallow a pill and expedite the maturation process.
I told you it. You got it. Let's move on.
Yeah. We just can't do that. Everybody runs their own race, and everybody's on their own path. Now, once again, there's a balance. It doesn't mean that you're not going to hold people accountable. If they're making the same mistake over and over, we're going to talk about that. That might mean that they might have to, somebody else might have to play more or be inserted into a lineup, or you're going to need extra film sessions. So we're going to set this up and demand that you're, do it until you get it. But the point is that with patience, with perseverance, and again, I think we have to communicate to them both verbally and non-verbally. We are not giving up on you. We know you can get this. We believe you are capable of this. And so we're going to work together. And again, I think, and one of the things I will tell you today in the world that is different, I've tried to do a very good job of adapting to this or having this mindset. Coaching it's collaborative. I mean, I know my college coach, if he'd have told me to go, climb the rafters, I'd have climbed the rafters. Now I might have questioned him internally, but now I think players, I really, the why is so important. Not just the what or the how, but they have to know the why. And so again, the collaborative effort of communicating and conveying to a player, we are not giving up. You're not getting this right now. It's not to our standard, but know this. We believe you are capable, and we are going to work with you to make this happen and to get it done. And again, unless there's a character chip and a flaw in that player, I think most players I've been around will respond to that.
Another great example of maybe a test to see if your program is headed in the right direction is, how often do players ask questions? Do they feel like this is an environment where questions are going to be met with a thoughtful answer, where we actually take into account what they're seeing? Because I don't know about you. I mean, I don't take a shot all season long. Like, I'm 0 for 0 the last 16 years in games. So it really does matter what they see. Yep. And not what I think I see as a player that I maybe once was at one point in time. But how many questions are they asking? And then we got to be careful not to think because there's 0 questions, that's just because we are explaining it so well that they've got it. Right. Maybe they're not comfortable enough to ask questions.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And I think that goes back to, it's like any good teacher. Any good classroom teacher that you've had or been around, they create an environment of there's an open invitation to be inquisitive, to be curious, to seek out truth and to seek out answers and explore those. It's not just hey, we're going to read from a book, or I'm going to write things on a board and give you facts, and then you're going to regurgitate them at test time. There's an environment that you create as a teacher. And I think that goes back to something you said a little earlier, the art of coaching. I think one of the arts of coaching is to create an environment where questions are encouraged and where curiosity and inquisitiveness, they are encouraged. One of the things it's funny in talking to coaches, sometimes coaches will perceive it as a threat when a player will suggest something or say, Coach, how about the final scene in Hoosiers, right? Gene Hackman says, Jimmy, you're going to be the decoy and Brad's going to take the shot. And they're just all sitting there. And, now nobody spoke up, but Jimmy finally says, hey, I'll make it, and I think that's a good thing when you encourage. Now, again, it has to be done respectfully. It has to be done in a way that players aren't just going to run roughshod over plans. But I've talked to coaches, and it almost surprises me, Matt. There are coaches that are very threatened by that, or they're very put off by that. And then there are other coaches that are very welcoming of that. And I just think, one of the things that kind of subliminally maybe, or a secondary thing that I've always tried to do, is I want to ignite a fire and a love for the game in players. I want them to not just be good at what we're doing and improve their shooting and improve their skill. That's so important to me. Don't get me wrong. But one of the underlying things, maybe the secondary layers that I want from players that I'm around, is I want them to love the game like I love it, or close to it. I want to ignite a passion and a curiosity and a sense of learning about this game that gets them fired up. So they might, before you even, because I ask a lot of questions of players as I teach, but before I even do, sometimes players will say, now, why did you have us do this? Or why'd you have us curl this cut versus, coming off this side? I love that. I invite that. And so I think, again, as coaches and teachers and leaders, we help to create that environment by encouraging those questions and getting excited about them, looking somebody in the eye, or maybe a shoulder touch or a fist bump, saying, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. Now let's explore that, versus saying, because I said so. because that's the way the offense is set up. I think you can kill someone's curiosity and passion for learning, or you can ignite it. And I choose to do the latter.
Coaches, we are all searching for ways to better evaluate players in order to give meaningful feedback. Over 15 years ago, I put together a test called the Jamodi Skill Rating. The JSR takes players through a series of tests involving basketball skill or athleticism, giving them one rating at the end. Their JSR rating will give you clarity on what needs to be discussed with players and parents on areas they need to focus on improving. I test our players at least 4 times each year. They're able to compete against each other, past players' scores, and most importantly, their past performances. If you'd like to start testing your athletes, email me at jamodipodcast@gmail.com for more information. You've mentioned that a couple of times about non-verbally doing things as well. You find it really important not just to be saying things, but with your and obviously you can say something, but if your facial expressions, or even your tone, tone is nonverbal. It can really ruin the message you're trying to convey. But you're talking about physically, fist bumps, some type of, what is the connection that you see there with maybe getting your point across even more, getting them on board more?
Well, I think first of all, there's eye contact and physical touch are 2 incredible ways to connect with people. And it's got to be done appropriately. It certainly can't be overdone, like all the time. Every time somebody does something, they're getting, I'm not a big believer in that. I like to be very specific with what I'm praising for, something that has happened that, maybe there's growth in an area that there was struggling before, or maybe there's a really big play that was made, or an extra effort. You can just see the effort level was so elite. So I like to recognize that. And again, eye contact, physical touch, I think are 2 great ways of connecting with people. I know for me, when someone talks to me and they make eye contact, or maybe as a player, I can still remember a coach maybe, again, just kind of touching me on the shoulder, or giving me a little, they might just give me a little playful elbow, on the side, or maybe a little fake punch to like in the rib. They go, "What, man, that's a hit right there." And I don't do that with our women, but the point is,
good call. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interpreted by me as a very positive, it was positive reinforcement. It was recognition of my worth and value. I know my self-image went up when those things happened for me. So I think, again, that's so much a part of what we're doing as teachers and coaches, Matt, is we're building self-worth and self-esteem and the self-image of the athlete. Again, I've always been a big believer that as someone's self-image improves, so does their performance. I don't care what it is. Again, we can go across the board. A concert pianist, studio musician, a classroom teacher, a baseball player, any athlete a business person, a salesperson, a lawyer, a doctor. If their self-esteem and self-image rises, I think their performance rises. So that's one of the things you try to build, but you have to do it realistically. Again, it can't be smoke and mirrors and just a fake.
Yeah, they'll see through that.
Authenticity to it. Yeah. So those are things, yes, Matt, to your question, the nonverbal part of communication to me is so important, and as important, if not more so, than the verbal communication. Because again, what I say is one thing, what I do is another. And if players can pick up the energy and the reinforcement that they're getting from my words, I think it whatever I'm teaching becomes that much more powerful.
I think early on, I really wanted players to feel like or think that I had all the answers. Like I wanted to be a really good coach, and really good coaches aren't tested by their players, and they're not they always have the right answers. And I think the 2 things came to my mind with a lot of things you said is, one, we need to have humility and realize that we don't know everything. And then also be careful of taking ourselves too seriously. Even though it's important what we're doing, the passion that you have for it after 41 years, man, it comes through the screen, when you're talking. But the idea that we can't make mistakes, and we're so worried about the way that we're perceived by our peers as coaches or our players, man, we can't take I just took myself too serious for too many years, where I didn't allow myself to be playful with players.
Yeah.
I didn't even want, because Coach Bliss, my college coach, he wasn't playful, and so I thought that's what serious coaching is. And I think the longer that I do it, obviously I haven't done very long, but getting to talk with enough coaches that kind of say similar things, or kind of all floating down a similar stream, like you start to see, like, golly, there's something to this, where I want to keep my humility, realizing I can make mistakes, and my players need to know that. And then also not take myself too serious, no matter how big time at a small private school I get.
Yes, no question. Well, one of the best, and I love the word humility, and I think sometimes people can get that a little mixed up too. One of the best definitions I've ever heard of that, Matt, was true humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. And one of the things that humility, it's like a roadmap that leads me to that phrase that I used a little earlier, is servant leadership.
Yeah.
True servants are humble. They're not necessarily meek and mild-mannered, or they're certainly not doormats, but there's a humility about them to know that they don't know it all. They don't know it all. Again, great Coach Wood, when you're through learning, you're through. And Pat used to tell us, Coach Summit used to tell us weekly, guys, we never arrive in this game. You never arrive. There's always more to learn. There's always more room for growth. There's room for improvement. We got to continue to seek ways to do it better. Pat was never afraid to blow something up. We may have won a national championship, and she'd say, we got to look at what we're doing here. It's not very good. And the temptation is to say, well, Pat, we just won a national championship. Well, yeah, we did, but maybe that won't get us there this next season, So I think having a humility about yourself to know that you don't know it all, nor will you ever know it all, but you're going to continue to learn. You're going to be a lifelong learner. And I think, again, players, one of the things, again, the most powerful tool a teacher has is their own example. Hands down. If I know nothing else, Matt, in the next whatever time we're going to spend together, I know this with certainty. The most powerful weapon a teacher has is their own example. So when your players see you and our players see us being humble and admitting something that maybe we don't know what we don't know, but we'll get the answer, and saying that, we don't know it all, and we're going to continue to be learners. We're still studying in the off season. I went somewhere to learn. I'm learning from this person. We brought this person in to learn from. I think players respect that. And I think that encourages them to be along that same path as well. So I think that's a very important piece, is being humble. And again, knowing that we don't know it all. And, another word that comes to mind in this area of the conversation is being vulnerable.
Yeah.
I think leaders, one of the real deficiencies in leaders, and again, there's a fine line, there's a balance. I don't want to say, you don't want some leader that's up there and they're going to fall apart every time they get up to the podium. And
he
say,
cries every time he talks to us.
Yeah, it's happened to me, and I'm so, no, of course.
Yeah.
But allowing people to see, being vulnerable enough that people see your mistakes, and then you, A, being accountable, B, taking ownership, and then C, correcting those mistakes. I'll never forget I was a head coach at Northwood University. I think it was in my third year. And I remember after a game one time saying, guys, I heard us in that game. I wasn't good in the last minutes. And that's on, I think you guys won the game, and I think I helped lose it. And I apologize. And I'll never forget those guys. They just, no. And then they started, that turnover, and, with 11 minutes left, we turned the ball over 2 times in a row and we missed 2 late. they will rush to your defense more often than not when you're and again, it's got to be done authentically. You can't be contrived or made up but when a leader,
it's hard to plan. It's hard to plan vulnerability.
Yes. But I think when they see that, Matt, my point is when they see true humility, when they see vulnerability, but they also see strength to own it, to be accountable and to own it also takes strength and courage. And whether or not they're emotionally mature enough to grasp all that, they respect it. They respect when somebody in authority owns up. I mean, look at our world today. Do we see that on a high level in our leadership in our country or anywhere else? Right? No, we rarely see that anymore.
Deflect.
Oh my gosh, we can't point fingers and create blame fast enough. So when that happens, I really believe that people who are invested in an endeavor, whatever it may be, in our case, it's a basketball team, but whether I've read so many things in military leadership and things. And one of the things, Extreme Ownership is a book that comes to mind. And Jocko Willink and Lee Saban are phenomenal. And one of the things they continually talk about, I love that example where Jocko Willink says there was a training exercise and things went really drastically wrong. So they're doing the after action report. And so he's got all of his squad leaders and platoon leaders in there. And he's saying, okay, this happened. Whose fault was that? And one by one, these platoon leaders are all taking, our guy screwed up here. I screwed up here. I gave a bad call. And he'd say, okay, whose fault is it? Nope, wrong. Okay, whose fault is that? Nope, wrong. And at the end, you know whose fault it is, guys? It's my fault because I was in charge of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it went to crap and I'm going to own it. And I can promise you it's not going to happen again. When that happens, your troops, your players, your people in the business sector, they are going to rally around you. Now, it can't happen every week or else you might be replaced.
My fault again, guys.
Yeah. Okay, guys, we're 4-16 and I've blown 12 of them. That can't happen. You're probably going to be working at the 7-Eleven before long on the, selling Frosty somewhere at Wendy's. But no, honestly, vulnerability, humility are huge components of leadership to me, Matt. And I'm glad you brought it up.
No, it's good. The idea, I think every coach will say this in some way throughout a season of, hey, it's not me versus you, fellas. Like ladies, it's us together, moving together forward. The words are nice, but they're going to know real quick whether or not we mean that by all of those things you've just talked about. We want them to really feel like it is us as a group, as a team, not, and because I've played for guys or been around guys where it's coach up here, we're down here, and we saw the difference. We felt it. And, but then you nailed it too. But also having in self-awareness, I love that word that you brought up. And TJ Rosine at Emmanuel, I think one of the best culture guys, one of the best coaches out there. He said self-awareness is a superpower. Yep. Like to know when it's enough vulnerability, when it's enough, when we're on the same level enough, but then to still keep the line. We're not friends. We're not buddies.
That's right.
There's a line, but there's a difference between us. But I think that's where, and maybe it happens over time. Maybe it happens from listening to good people. But one of my players years ago said, Coach, I think you want us to be robots. And I said, what? What do you mean robots? Well, he said, well, you're a robot. I coached like one, no emotion, really just go, move, next thing, let's go next. And so that's what they were mimicking. I think I want them to have it's us together mentality, but understanding where that line is as well.
Absolutely. And that's the thing now, too. A lot of times people hear what we've been talking about in these last few minutes, and they'll think, oh, gosh, well, you're just going to be buddy with your players.
Yeah.
You're not at all. And again, part of leadership, it's kind of like when someone's a tough guy. When someone's a real tough guy, they don't need to tell you. The real tough guys, because those aren't the guys that are necessarily loudest in the room or popping off. And it's just like a leader. When someone's in charge because they aren't afraid to hold people accountable. They aren't afraid to make decisions. Sometimes as a leader, the buck stops with you, as Harry Truman said years ago, the buck stops there. And you have to make hard decisions. And you're not afraid to do that. You're not afraid to hold people accountable. But at the same time, you're also not afraid to show reinforcement and reward things that are happening that are good, and stepping back sometimes and allowing other people, part of what good leaders do is they create leaders around them. I'll never forget, and I forget where I used this, I think in one of the press conferences last year when Coach Merchant had a medical issue that I had to be the interim head coach for the last 10 games of our season. And it was a press conference, and I forget the question that was asked that triggered this, but I always remembered watching this thing years ago, an NFL film things, and it was Bud Grant, the Minnesota Vikings, and Bud Grant said something to this effect. I'm going to paraphrase, but one of the signs of great leadership is when you can remove the leader and the ship still functions at a very high level. The team, the unit, whatever, it's still at a high level of efficiency if you temporarily remove the leader. And I think that is so important to understand. Yes, you have to set the tone. You have to be the keeper of the keys of the culture, so to speak. You're the guardian of the gate and guardian of the core values to making sure they're adhered to, they're followed, that they're not trampled on, that somebody that is violating a code or a standard is held accountable, and there are consequences. That's part of what we do as leaders. But at the same time, we also create a vision and we create hope. And what we try to do, I've always believed this, that on any good team, there comes a point in time where, figuratively speaking, the coach, the leader, he's at the helm, he's steering. There's a point when there's a tap on the shoulder and the team captains or the team leaders or the veterans say, Coach, step aside for a minute. We got this. We're going to help steer this ship. Stay on board. Keep us abreast. Keep us following, the course, but let us steer. We're going to guide this thing for a little bit. That's very powerful. And once again, I think an insecure leader, someone who's unwilling or afraid to be vulnerable, I think that's a fearful picture for them. Mm-hmm. I think for a secure leader, that's what we want.
Yeah.
We want to have ownership with, again, one of the great things I learned from Pat was so big on ownership within the team. Now, you had to earn it. You had to prove to her that you were capable of it, and you had to be worthy of it by virtue of your daily performance and your consistency. But if there came a point in time and you were ready for that, she wouldn't hesitate to give some ownership in areas to the team. And I'll tell you right now, I think that's a very powerful tool.
This may be a hard question, but for a high school coach dealing with that 14 to 18-year-old range where,
yep.
And I'm not saying that there's a huge difference between them and college kids. Golly, some of them are 18, right? Right. It's around the same age, but it might be hard to answer. What are some ways where you could see a coach giving a little bit more ownership to some of those people that over time, over years, he's seen that they've earned it?
Oh, that's great. That's a great. And I will say this, as you were speaking, Matt, I thought about that, saying, depending on the level and the maturity level, not the level of coaching you're at, and then the maturity level of your players, you have to be very discerning about, because you got to be careful. Ownership is a very powerful thing. And once you hand it over, it's hard to pull back right away. So I think you do have to make sure that those folks have earned it. But now what you're asking, to make sure that I'm clear, are ways that you can help create that within a team or with players.
Yeah, ways to show or give them ownership, or because you said there are times where she would hand it over, or give what are some and I hope you don't take disrespect to this, but while you're talking, some ideas do pop in my head, and I don't want to be the head of a snake that when I'm not there, the thing falls apart, because then really our culture it's not us creating it. It's not our standards. It's a person. It's a personality. And golly, there's big organizations, I feel like, that get in trouble for that. The head of the personality is it, and then there's really no substance underneath it. And then when that person, when their character or something happens, the whole thing collapses. My thought was maybe because we have second period athletics here, it's 43 minutes long, and each day there are some parts of the workout that, two ball Tuesdays, like we're going to hit two ball at the beginning of Tuesdays. There's an idea of what if I just walked in, because I usually have the clock going, I got my whistle, I got the music going, like I'm energetic. What if I just sat there?
Yeah.
And what if I let the clock go? And I just kind of, not looking pissed off or anything, but just sat there and just saw, like, could they get themselves going? What would it look like if I didn't even stop them after that? Because we usually go for 4 to 5 minutes. Do they have something in their catalog that, hey, let's go to 3-step explosion, and then take themselves to it? And then I was kind of imagining, the joy and the celebration that we could have after it's what I would believe and hope that it would be completed successfully, or the teaching moment of, guys, listen, I can't be the one running this, take ownership of it. That book, Extreme Ownership, is right behind me. I'm going through it at this moment. And when you told that story, I just read it, but I don't know, that was an idea of something. But I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Oh, no. And I think that's a good fact. What you just said there reminded me of an incident years ago. One of my old coaches in Bay City, Michigan, used to pull this once or twice a year on teams that he coached. He would not show up to start practice. And he would now, where his gym where he was, he could go up to the upper level, and there's kind of a little area he could see down, but they couldn't see him. And so he would watch to see how they would react, because normally he was a stickler. It was 3:30 practice, and man, at 3:25, you better be laced up, ready to go, warmed up. And at 3:29, that whistle blew. And then once every blue moon, he wouldn't show up. Might be once or twice a year. He would see how the team reacted, who took charge, how long maybe it took them, and he said, he goes, one year I remember, he said, my two captains, they jumped right into it, said, okay, guys, 3-ball shooting, boom, here we go. Now we're going into this. Now we're going to pacer drill. And he said, I knew then, I didn't know, I thought we had a good team, but one thing I knew, we had a team that was squared away with leadership. These guys just took charge. I wasn't there. So that's one thing, certainly. Here are some other things over the years, ideas. I love this, Don. I learned this from Don Meyer. He would whisper to one player. You'd be doing one drill, and he'd say, okay, Matt, when the clock hits 8:02, I want you to get them to the other end of the floor. We're going to do 3-on-3 Nagani drill. Boom. No one else heard it but you and him. So at 8:02, all of a sudden, Matt's crying out, Nagani drill, other end, go. And now we're seeing, hey, does Matt have the capability and the propensity to take charge and to communicate and to get teammates doing stuff like that? Asking players input, like a great way for me is during film sessions, is asking players, getting their, and I teach like this anyway. I'm very big in the Socratic method of asking questions. I like to teach by asking questions. So again, asking players what they see, what's going on, what were they thinking, or maybe showing a short clip of an opponent, say, okay, what are your thoughts? What do you think of Indiana? You've just seen a 4-minute thing. What do you think of this team? Tell me what you see as their strengths, who are their best players, etc. That's something I think that's very good. Asking players something, and again, you have to be careful, because you don't want to ask everybody. You don't want to make this long. Maybe some of your younger players are not ready for this, but some of your veterans certainly say, okay, we played 3 games. All right, Joey, what are we good at? What do you think we got to work on, Joey? Maybe this is after practice. It's not, before practice. Now, sometimes you might before practice. I've talked to coaches that say they have a plan, but then they might say, okay, what's one thing that you guys think we need to work on today? I've got a plan here, but give me one thing that you guys think we need to work on. And, they're soliciting input. One of the things that I found that people will support what they help to create. So giving them some avenues to have input and getting their thoughts. Number one, they're part of the process of creating it. Number two, I think you show that you value them and you value what they think. And I think that in and of itself is a very valuable weapon and a very valuable tool to create ownership. So I think those are some ways that you can do that. Allowing players part of the decision. I remember Dean Smith used to say this all the time. He'd say, I give them input and a voice on everything that's not important. So we're going to practice on Saturday. Okay, Michael, Sam, James, do you want to practice at 10 a.m. or do you want to practice at 11:30 a.m.? They get to say, but the point is that you are gradually, it's not something that happens in a day or a week even, but through these little things, you can gradually create ownership. One of the things also, this was another great thing Pat used to do. She'd pull one of the veterans or older players aside and say, hey, have you talked to Lori in the last week or two? I think she's kind of struggling. What I need you to do is I need you to spend some time with Lori. Take her out for a lunch, or just, maybe just, buy her some ice cream somewhere. You guys just sit down, have a slice of pizza. I need you to talk to Lori and see how she's doing. Let me know. So that player really felt like, wow, Pat is trusting me, almost like an assistant coach. Go talk to Lori, see how she's doing, feel her out. Is everything okay? And then let me know how I can help her. So I think there are a lot of little things, Matt, that can add up to being big things by giving ownership to your players and just helping them to feel that, hey, I'm not just here. I'm not just wearing a uniform. I'm helping this is my team. Yeah. This is our team, but also this is my team. I'm having a real big stake in this thing, and I want it to go well. So I think those are all things that I found that have worked over the years.
I love that Dean Smith quote about giving up control of some of those things that just aren't really that important. And I think that's a great activity for coaches to, just write down a list of what are all the little, you could call them standards, but all the little things that you require and or that you don't allow them to do, or that so mottos on t-shirts. Like I used to always try to be so clever with what I teach. And then I just started giving them, you seniors, come up with a couple mottos you'd love to have on a shirt. Golly, those were their favorite shirts. Warm-up music, at a private Christian school, as long as it's Christian rap, you guys tell me the 6 or 7 songs you want. Instead of me picking Metallica or something, that wouldn't work at Faith. But, like something old that I would, give me fuel, I would love that, but
MMA, the UFC, right. They're coming
that's right. But let me ask you this. So even on that note, there are the purist side of me that thinks, we should wear the same shoes. We should look the same. We don't do game handshakes out there because that's not what serious teams do. Or is that something I'm just still holding on to that, do I really care about that? Does it really affect winning? Are we not a serious program if I let them go out and do some prepared handshakes? What are your thoughts on stuff like that?
Yeah, I think for me, because I was the same way as a head coach. We had to wear the same thing on the road, and I do like that. I still like that, like a warm-up suit or something. Everybody looks the same, and we do that here at Michigan State. I can tell you. But as far as shoes, I let that one go a few years ago because invariably there's going to be that one player, and sometimes it might be your best player. Coach, these the Kyries don't fit me just right, or these don't do whatever. And rather than sitting there and saying, no, we're all doing it. And now this kid, first of all, he's a little edgy because he came to you with something and got shot down. And then the blister might be that big, but now he's going to let you know that it's that big. And, rather than I think, again, we've got to be smart enough to pick your battles.
Yeah.
In this day and age, especially, I think you have to be very judicious. Which battles are important enough to fight and hold your ground, and which battles are not enough to let. And our thing is this: as long as it's not anything, we don't want somebody, we want you to be who you are, but at the same time, we don't want it to be so extravagant that you stick out like a sore thumb. And hey, look, I know everybody, like there occasionally, I remember this over the years, players would test you a little bit. They turn their practice jerseys around. They'd wear them front back. You know what I mean? So the big numbers would be on the front, the little number would be on the back, and or they have their shorts or a different pair of shorts. We at Tennessee, for instance, everybody, it was laid out for them. The managers laid out the same practice gear. Well, then somebody would try to, I like these shorts better, and pull them on. And again, for me, my solution is that real simple. I'll just come over very politely and say, you know what? Hey, Lisa, could you please help me out here? Help us out. Everybody's got the same shorts, but you. I don't know what happened, but I talked to the managers. You got a pair in there. Could you help us out, please? And just, it's a small thing, but we need you to do this. Thank you. Before they even have a chance to respond, I know you're going to help me out on this. Thank you. And, I'm letting them know I'm not going to get all twisted up on this, but there again, as a leader, that's one of the areas I'm going to hold the line on. And I'm going to hold you accountable. We've all talked about this. The other thing too, Matt, along this line is another thought, and this might even apply certainly even in high school, but I know in college a couple of times we've asked players, okay, what should the punishment be? And sometimes it might be the team. Sometimes, again, it might be your captains or we'd sometimes have even a leadership group, take your 4 or 5 senior states people, whatever, and say, okay, faith Christian guys, when a guy's late for conditioning, what should the punishment be? When a guy's late for practice, what should the punishment be? If a guy, talks back to a coach, what would and you might not do everything, but maybe 3 or 4 key things. Matt, a lot of times their punishments are more harsh than what we came up with.
Good call. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, you're giving them ownership, but now when those moments happen, you say, okay, this is what we agreed on. This is what the leadership group has agreed on. That we've talked as a staff. I've talked as a head coach with our leadership team. We've come up with these standards. And so now you are the enforcer of them, but they're the creator of them. So it's like, hey, man, you're late. Guess what? You're 5 minutes late. That means the team has 5 sprints. Let's go. Oh, well, coach, no, we talked. You guys did it. Boom, go. And I think, again, it becomes makes your job a little easier, but at the same time, you've got to hold the line in the areas that you think are important to hold the line. And certainly to me, that would be one of them. So yeah, the handshake thing, as long as it's not overly, like somebody does a different handshake, I'm good with that. If that handshake takes 90 seconds, I'm going to say, you know what, we got a game to play.
If they have bull horns and they have
shorten it up. Okay, we're not here to see a Saturday Night Live skit. We're here to play a game. Get your thing. Let's go.
But Coach, I feel like everything you were talking about here with giving players ownership, that really translates well to the culture of your program also. How many times I know I have is I see a great acronym and man, all these words mean something really cool, or this is our slogan for the year. This is our word for the year. There's nothing wrong with those things. I'm not against acronyms. I mean, golly, PGC, SHAPE. I took that home when I directed for them. I took that home and I made it our culture for a couple of years until I realized I don't think our players care about these words nearly as much as I do.
Right.
And because they had no ownership in it, it was hollow or shallow. And so the way that you've talked about a lot, Tyler Costin talked about the stakeholders in your program. You need to have all the stakeholders. It's not just I'm not the only one. All the stakeholders, including parents at times too, especially at the high school level.
Yes.
On board with and understanding, and then giving them the ability to influence the culture and what standards we do have. I think what you've just said about some of the parts within a team, it really works well with culture as well.
Yes, I would agree. I think it's so important. And again, it was I forget where I first learned it, but the phrase that makes it very concise for me: people will support what they have helped to create.
Yeah.
And I think it was Richard Marcinko, who was the founding member of SEAL Team 6. Back then they called it Green Team. And he put together a team. And one of the things, there's a book called The Real Team that he talks about each team member. and who they were and the value they brought to the team, but also the formation of that team. And he mentions that, I think, once or twice in that book, as far as, a lot of times when you have high performers, and again, those guys are high, you and I are coaching people, they're not all high performers. Those guys are the best of the best. But his point was, when you have high performers, to just give them a rule book or slap down a piece of paper and say, here's what we're doing, they don't get nearly as invested as when they help to create, hey guys, what do you think we should do about this? Or when we're in this scenario, what do you think are the best ways to go about this? Hey guys, when you travel, what do you think when we all get off the bus? Should we have our headphones on or should we have our headphones off? I think we need to talk about that. And when they have input and they have, uniformity and agreement, it becomes powerful. Now, as opposed to you standing at the bus door and say, hey, headphones off. Those guys are checking each other a little bit, saying, hey, Mike, remember what we said? Headphones. Yeah. Hey, Matt, headphones off. It's powerful when it can start to permeate your culture, that it's not just you, but it's the members of your team that are helping to uphold that culture. That's very powerful.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here. Once you have established those standards, how does that drive the performance of your team?
Yeah, I think what it does is that it lets everybody know the ground that they're on. We all share the same ground. And we now can focus, because all these other peripheral things are in place. We can now focus 100% of our energies each day. Now, again, temporarily might be a distraction. Someone overslept for a 7 a.m. workout. Okay, what's our standard? We got to deal with it.
Yeah.
Consequent, we handle it, we move on. But for the most part now, once everyone's clear on the standards and we believe in them and we're all going to work to uphold them, we can now invest 100% of our daily energies and our resources into achieving the mission and pushing ourselves towards excellence and pursuing whatever it is that we're pursuing in terms of our objective that year, that day, whatever.
That's a great point. It's exhausting to have to coach or worry about everything all the time.
Yep.
And what those standards do are systems, right? There, you have systems in place that help to run themselves and steer you clear of some of those pitfalls. But like you said, little things are going to happen. I mean, no one's perfect. But if you ever feel like as a coach that you're exhausted, it's always something. There's always something we're having to deal with. I think you got to check your systems, check the standards that you have in place.
Yep, for sure. And again, exhausting is a good word because, if you're every single, and again, in a new program, or maybe you have low maturity people, this is something you're going to probably have to spend a little more time and energy on. But if every day after a course of time, you've been in place for a few months or a season or two, and you've got to check, are we all dressed the way we say we're dressed? And are we, our warm-up routine, one of the big things for us, I remember at times we had a team a few years ago that they'd come out before practice, and some people would be shooting, and some people, they'd go sit down. They'd shoot a few shots. They'd go sit down on those nice cushy seats, and it's like, no, if we're on the court, we're working on our game. If you're not ready to come out on the court, if you're getting taped, whatever, fine, do it. But once you hit the court, we're not coming over and sitting down and conversing. That's not our time to do. We're doing. So once those things are in place, you can now focus more on what you're doing that day. But it is very tiring and exhausting if you're constantly looking for all the little mice droppings, and you've got to constantly be cleaning up and paying attention to that. I can't go home and work on the $4 million sale that I'm going to be pitching on Friday, because I'm always cleaning up cat poop and dog poop and mice poop. I can't be doing all those things at the same time. So yes, I think it can be exhausting, but one of the good things about it is when it's in place, and it's not just you that are the gatekeeper, but you've got, your leadership team, your captains, your seniors, your veterans, whatever you want to call it. Man, it's powerful. And now, guys, ladies, we can focus on our mission.
And I think a lot of people talk about the difference between punishment and consequences. I think the consequences are a lot more just reminders, but if there is a little bit of pain, a little bit of inconvenience involved with the consequence of the reminder, nothing wrong with that. I'm a huge fan of obviously having the clock, as we have second period athletics, so that our basketball time is right in the middle of the school day, where they're coming from a class, they got 7 minutes. They know they have 7 minutes. Because that standard is set, there's not this idea of, well, maybe I should just talk with my friends for a little while in the hallway. No, I got to put my head down and I got to get there, because at the end of those 7 minutes, it's not going to be an angry, Coach Saman waiting for me. There's just going to be a towel on the floor. And that towel, I automatically know that I have to go over and grab it, and I have to push it down the floor, and I have to push it back. The beauty of the towel push, Coach, in my opinion, is the greatest consequence of all time, because I don't have to watch them. If they go slow, it hurts. If they go fast, it hurts. I don't care how they get it done. But the beauty of the standards, or having systems like that put in place, is it takes the emotion out of it.
That's right.
You and I are, once you do that, we're good. We're fine. I'm going to coach you hard. If I didn't have that, and I was just annoyed when this dude walks in late, if I let him jump in, it changes my mentality toward maybe how I coach him, how I coach the rest of my time. And what I really want is, like you've said it before, we're going to give you our very, very best. And part of it is, when you make a mistake, pay for it. You and I are good. Let's move on.
All is forgiven. That's the thing. You don't hold any, ill will or anything. And like you said, it's very matter of fact. The emotion is not out of it. I'm not going to rant and rave. I'm just going to say, okay, 2 minutes late. All right, everybody on the line. Another big thing for me, and this was, again, and everybody's different, what you want to emphasize or value.
Sure.
But one of our core values when I was a head coach is that you leave a place better than you found it. So I was always the last one to leave the locker room. I might leave, but then I'd circle back. And if there was anything on that floor, a piece of tape, a Gatorade top, an orange peel, which these are all things I found over the years, I would just put it, I'd have a little baggie, I'd put it in my bag, and the next day, those would be on the scores table for practice. And the guys would come out and go, oh, no. And they knew they had a sprint for everything I found on that floor. They would have a sprint. And I wasn't angry. Oh, you guys left the locker. No, these are what I found. And, whether it was a bus, a locker room, or, at this level, it's team planes. I'll search that plane, our managers, if they pick up anything. And my big thing is, listen, somebody's cleaning those things up, and they probably have a family, and they need to get home. They don't need to spend extra time cleaning up a mess that we can clean up ourselves. We're not going to be a burden to anybody else. We're going to actually help them, and we're going to leave this place better. So anyway, yes, what you do is you take the emotion out of it, and you deal with the consequence, and you move on. And I like our coach here now, Coach Freilich, Robin Freilich. She has a good way of phrasing this. She said, if something happens once, it happens. Okay, we deal with it. There's a consequence. We move on. If maybe even happens a second, okay. But if this is happening 3, 4, 5 times, this is now a pattern. There's a difference between a mistake and a pattern.
That's huge.
It's I think is a great way to a great distinction. She said, a mistake, we all make them. That's going to happen to all of us at some point. But a pattern is different. If you miss one class, that's a mistake. Okay, you overslept. But if you've missed 6 classes, that's a pattern. And that ain't good. So anyway, that I like that distinction. And again, there's going to be accountability and consequences for each. But if it's a pattern, that's going to be a more serious conversation, and it could have more serious repercussions.
Confidence, it is one of those areas that I think coaches, we get that we can't necessarily create confidence out of nowhere.
Right.
You know, their confidence has to come from some of the work that they've already done, the belief that they have in themselves. But we can, and you've kind of said this, with the way we speak, our nonverbal and verbal communication, we can influence the direction of their thoughts about themselves and their confidence. How do you build confidence in your players if you see that they're starting to go down a little bit?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things. And then again, that's also a very hard question, because if there was a surefire, it's kind of like, it's very different building confidence and, you know, helping someone improve their free throw shooting, or, you know, making a layup, because there are certain tactics, techniques, mechanics, it's a better word.
Yeah.
That are involved, and they're consistent with everybody. Confidence is such a different thing. But here are some things. Number one, I don't like to substitute for a mistake. Never have. I never have. Now, if it's something egregious, if someone, you know, fails to like dive for a loose ball and somebody else beats them to it, or somebody doesn't talk on a screen and their teammates gets clobbered, that might be a quick sub. But I'm talking about a turnover, maybe a missed shot or a missed layup, or a something, you know, even a missed defensive assignment that was, you know, you could just had a scramble and I missed it, whatever. I don't like to, because I like players to be able to work through things. I like to tell, again, non-verbally tell them, look, I recognize you made a mistake. We'll talk about it the next dead ball or the timeout when we come over. Hey, you got to cut. You're the tag person on that pick and roll. You have got to come from the corner. You understand? Okay, good. I just don't like to suck, because basically what the message I think I'm sending is, I don't think you messed up. I don't think you're capable of playing through this. I got to get somebody else in.
Yeah.
So that's number one. I really, now again, if it happens repeatedly, that's different. And if it's something that we've talked about a lot, and this is, we're 14 games in and this is happening repeatedly, I might on that. But I'm just saying initially, I don't like to do that. Second thing, I think showing them, I call them feel-good clips. They might be 90 seconds to 3 minutes, but clipping good things that they've done. Again, an old educational adage. I learned this as while being certified in college. I was secondary ed certified teacher. And one of the things I learned in education class, educational psychology actually was a class, catch them doing something good and praise them. If you want to repeat behavior, if you want behavior to be repeated, catch them doing something good and praise them. So I will clip good things. I'll also clip, I have two things on my clip: highlight and learning. Highlight and learning. I don't hammer mistakes. I'll point out some things. And again, we're talking about, this is learning. It's not personal. But if I feel a player, Matt, is really struggling with their confidence, at some point I'm going to pull them in. We're going to show them like a 60-second, 90-second, 2-minute maybe highlight. These are all the good things you've done. This is what you're capable of. This is who we see you as a player. So this is what you've got to get to. And then again, there's nothing more for me that builds confidence than preparation. So if somebody's struggling with passing into the post, we're going to grab a couple practice players. We're going to get 10 minutes before pre-practice.
Extreme ownership, right?
Yes. We're going to practice feeding the post 10 minutes before practice. I love this. We got two players on our team that last year really struggled with lateral movement defensively. They weren't bad athletes, but every drive they would open up their hips. Don, second step cutoff, right? They really struggled with that. So we brought in practice players, and at their request, I love them for this, because they're the ones that said, hey, can you work with us on one-on-one defense? So we had a stretch this summer. They probably went in, 7 or 8 times, and we had practice players, and actually it was this spring and summer, where they worked on, we would take 10 to 15 minutes, and we would just work on one-on-one defense, on cutting people up. We'd play one-on-one different place on the floor. We'd put them at a slight disadvantage. And so again, confidence comes from preparation. Confidence comes from demonstrated ability. That was another Coach Meyer thing that he got from Bill Parcells. You get great preparation, you do demonstrated ability, and then I think you've got to reinforce that to yourself. I think players have to take certainly a great level of responsibility and ownership for their own confidence.
Yep.
So reinforcing to yourself, one of the things that I'm so big with players about, how you talk to yourself is more important than just listening to yourself. How you talk to yourself. You've got to believe that you are capable. You've got to tell yourself. I know Mitch Kupchak, when I worked his camps, Mitch is now GM with the Charlotte Hornets, but he's a great player at UNC, was an Olympian, played with the Bullets, the Lakers, the Washington Bullets, who's now the Wizards, but, had a great NBA career. And he had an affirmation tape, and he would play to himself, I'm in superior condition, and I will outlast my opponents. I am a fierce competitor, and no one outworks me.
Interesting.
I am a hard-charging rebounder, and I can get any rebound that I pursue. He would have 7 or 8 of these affirmation statements that he'd play on a tape recorder, and literally it would be feeding his mind and feeding the confidence. It would literally, as the great Tim Gergovich used to say, you've got to weed and feed your garden. You got to weed and feed. You got to get the weeds out of there, and you got to feed good things, So that's really, really important. I think players don't do that enough.
Coach, there's so much there. I don't even know where to start. I think I jotted down a couple things. Dina Evans took over for Dick DiVenzio when he passed away in 2001, and she ran PGC. And great
I know
story.
where you're going with this. The great message on confidence that she gave.
You want to do it? You want me to do it?
No, you do it.
Yeah, she said, nobody can take your confidence, but you can give it away.
Yeah.
And that is we have to teach our players, and I love you said it, responsibility that they have for their level of confidence, so that if a mean fan, a teammate, a negative coach, or a bad coaching moment from a coach that normally is positive, because we have those, to be apparent at times.
Yeah. How about social media? Getting on Twitter and saying, oh, so-and-so's got a jump shot that's broke.
Yeah. If they are starting to feel that those negative thoughts in their head, and they're feeding those, they got to understand that that's on them.
Yes.
Take that extreme ownership of their confidence, but it's all based on the preparation. Because here's one thing we can't do is we can't lie to ourselves. We can't look in the mirror and say, I've never flown a plane before. I've never done any lessons. I've done no flight time. I've not been in a simulator. I cannot be confident in flying a plane. If I do, I'm insane. And something bad is about to happen. But I think players sometimes, especially early on, they may do some things in games and seem to have some confidence in something that they do know, and we know that you haven't really spent a lot of time on that. That's where the discipline, accountability, the truth message comes in, and some of the other things. But that was one thing.
Oh, no question. Well, and that's her thing, by the way, on confidence. I don't know. You could probably Google it and get some. I watched that thing. I took note. That's one of the best talks about confidence that I have ever seen. I thought she made so many great points. I thought she was spot on with some of the things that she discussed. But, what you were just talking about there, Matt, reminded me, one of the things that bothers me at times, when a player, they'll miss a couple shots and they'll go, what's wrong? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Okay. If something were wrong, we would have helped you correct that before. But you've got to develop a level of trust in your shot, in your abilities, in your capacity to execute and carry out whatever it is that we've asked you to do. You have to have a high degree of confidence. And if you don't, let's come in, let's rep it out. Let's get some high quality game-like reps, so that when you get back out there, again, it's kind of like, a boxer. They don't just go, hey, I'm going to go enter a box. I'm just going to. No, they're going to go. If they're smart, unless they want to just get tore up, they're going to go and they're going to train. They're going to get with somebody and they're going to train. They're going to hit the heavy bag and the speed bag and put together combinations, and they're going to, train their body and get their body in peak physical condition. Then they're going to spar, and then they're going to develop through all that preparation a level of confidence to go and now I'm going to go in the ring and actually do it against somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things. If your confidence is even remotely shaky, number one, let's go back and let's rep it out. Let's go back and let's get to that skill. Obviously, your habits aren't strong enough yet. They're not where they need to be. Repetition creates a habit. Habits create success. Very simple formula. So let's rep it out. Let's get our habits tighter and stronger, and then let's go execute. And now when you do make a mistake, let's learn from it. Again, the old Meyerism, Ralph. Recognize, admit, learn, forget. There's an acronym right there. It's not Ralph like, Ralph Nader or Ralph Gar, the old baseball player for the Atlanta Braves. It's Ralph, RALF. Recognize, admit, learn, and forget. So you've got to prepare yourself. And then when mistakes happen, recognize it, own it, but move on from it and continue to believe that, listen, I will find a way to get this done. I will find a way to get this done. Again, I'm going to really deviate for a second here.
You're good.
Great book to read is Red Circle, Brandon Webb. If anybody likes stuff about the Navy SEALs and some of the stuff, there's a great little piece in there, a few pages, and it's called Fire in the Gut. And basically, he was a poorly conditioned candidate that was in BUD/S. He was, by his own admission, he was holding the class back. The class was getting punished for everything that he was messing up, and his physical capacity was very poor. So the instructors and some of his classmates started to resent him because they were getting punished, and the instructors were on him more viciously and basically were trying to get him to quit. So one day there was a moment of truth where they separated him, and he got circled by a group of hardcore instructors. There were about 3 or 4 of them, as I recall. And they were on him. And basically, I won't use the words that he used in the book, but they were basically telling him what a worthless piece of excrement that he was and other things, and basically trying to get him to quit. And he said, for all that I lacked physically, one thing that I had, and I always had as a kid, was an incredible mental strength. And I looked at the one guy particularly who was coming at me the hardest, and I told him, you can do whatever you want to me. You can kill me in this next evolution, but the only way you're going to get me to leave this program is in a blankety blank body bag. And the guy looked at him. He said, I thought he might kill me on the spot, but he looked at me to gauge me if I was serious or if I was just talking smack. And he could tell I was serious. And he basically told me, okay, get back with your crew. You've got to have that type of tenacity if you're going to succeed at anything hard. Keeping somebody in front of you on defense is hard. Getting rebounds is hard. Finishing through contact is hard. Making a pressure jump shot is hard. So if you're going to do that, you've got to rep it out. And what he did to finish that story, he got extra PT, and he became one of the best guys in his class because he went with extra PT. He realized his shortcomings. But you've got to have that type. You've got to have Brandon Webb type of tenacity to say, I am not quitting. I am not giving up. I believe in myself. I'm going to get through this one way or another. I'm going to find a way.
Belief. You just said it. And there's a great video sometimes when I'm talking about shooting with athletes, and because I believe the mental side to shooting is just, it's more important than form. Assuming that their form isn't Lonzo Ball-esque, assuming that it's not that, that it's like handwriting. You and I have different styles of handwriting, but as long as we can read the words, it's still right.
We're
and
good.
So shooting is like that, but the mental side of it is just almost 90-10, I believe.
I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Coach Knight used to say this about all phases of the game, but I think this pertains to what you're talking about. Mental is to physical as 4 is to 1. So would you rather have players look at me? It's funny. Now that made sense to me, but I've used that over the years, and players look at me, they say, Dean, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And I said, well, simple. Would you rather have 4 $1 bills on the table? I'm going to put 2 tables. $4 on one table, $1 which table? I'm going to put 4 $100 bills on a table, or one. which table do you want? Well, they all say, oh, 4. There you go. Mental is to physical as 4 is to 1. So I couldn't agree with you more, Matt, on the shooting piece. The mental part of shooting is absolutely huge.
That's what to me makes Curry, and I know we're going down a rabbit hole now. It's what makes Curry so unique. It's not his mechanics. It's obviously there's ability off the bounce that just is. He really changed the game in that way. The difficulty, the amount of space he could create, or the lack of space he needed, to get a shot off. The sheer speed of it, but it's the confidence and it's the ability to shoot and believe that thing's going in. I mean, I just watch players shoot all day and they're basing it on hope. I hope it goes in. That mechanically does something different.
Yes.
It does something different to how you're moving that ball through air.
Yes.
Belief, though, golly, huge.
That's absolutely huge. Well, going back to something you referenced a short time ago, excuse me. The talk Dean Evans gave, do you remember she used that example of her with Rick Carlisle? They used to shoot together sometime. And she talked about he would miss some shots and he'd miss several in a row, and then he'd switch. Like, I forget, she used it. I think she gave actually a number. Like, they had this thing that they did together. They competed, and maybe it was 15 shots. And one time, like, he missed 11 or 10 out of the 15. And there were other ones that he just knocked in. And she said something. She said, Rick, are you like mad about those 10 you missed? He said, yeah, but did you see those 5 I made? They were, those were pure. Those were right. Those were nothing but net. And that's how great shooters, when we talk here about, we use the phrase, they have very short memories and they have very deep faith. They have very short memories and they have very deep faith. Great shooters, they have short memories and they have deep faith because they know, man, that next one's in. I don't care, man. I missed 3 and that next baby is going in and I'm letting it fly.
Great video with Draymond Green talking about belief, and he's just sitting at a press conference, and he said at some point you believed that you could be good at something before you were good at something. You believed that one day you could be. I thought of this from the story with the circle, the red circle, and he said, and then you worked really hard at that, and you became good at that thing.
Yes.
I think when we're talking to players about belief in what they're doing, it has to, you might not be good at that action yet, but you have to believe that at one point you can, because if there's a lack of belief that it could ever actually happen, you're less likely to go through the steps that it takes to get to that point. But a big part between belief and then it happening, in between all of that, is failures and improvements and failures. It's that ladder. But I think so many players, they see something that they could want. They start to believe that they could do it, but then maybe there's a lack of a plan or a lack of follow through in the work that stops them from making it happen. The way he articulated that was, you have your belief, at some point it happens, but you work really, really hard in between there. And I think that's kind of the magic recipe, right? Or the recipe right there.
You're so right. And that's the thing. Belief without work doesn't work. I can believe all I want. If I'm not, if I'm a 58% free throw shooter and I'm not shooting a couple hundred a day to get myself, I can have all the belief I want. And maybe I'll improve to 59. You know what I mean? I can show myself mental movies.
I can will myself 1 percentage point.
Yeah, you've all read those studies where they did the mental imagery, and that I believe you can improve a little, but there is no way I'm going from 58 to 78 but without getting in that gym and doing the work. So yes, there has to be belief is the opening piece. That's the root, but now you have to put the fruit with the root, and the fruit is the hard work that you're going to do to foster that belief and continue to generate and feed that belief that you're going to excel and actually be better at this. That's such an important piece. And I think that's a piece, again, that people miss. People miss that. They say, oh yeah, I believe it. Well, part of believing it and making it a reality is doing the work that it takes. There's nothing that replaces the work. I don't care what it is. You've got to do the work. And, you know, it is something else. One of my favorite groups of all time is the Eagles. And I watched a special on them. And this so applies to, I've told this story to teams several times over the years. Some kids now don't know the Eagles, so I have to, you know, I'm showing my generational gap. But they did a special. And one of the things that Don Henley, in one of the interviews, they asked him about it, you know, how'd you guys, I mean, your sound's so unique. And he said, you know, if you're going to be good in this thing, you've got to develop a high tolerance for monotony and repetition. Because what we did in that studio, there'd be times where it'd be 10 after 3 in the morning and we'd all be tired, but it wasn't quite right. We just didn't get it right. So if you're going to be really good in this thing, you got to develop a high tolerance for monotony and repetition. And I'm telling you, Matt, honestly, in my opinion now, this is strictly me, I think that chases more people away from excellence than any other thing. They simply do not, they have the belief, they have the desire, but they don't have the will to persevere through monotony and repetition. They just simply don't. And I think that chases more people away from dreams, objectives, goals, excellence, however you want to phrase it. I think that's the number one thief, is that they just simply don't develop a high tolerance for monotony and repetition because there's no other way. There's no other way. That's one part of the game. For all the ways the game's changed, when I was born to now, the same. When I've been in the ground 100 years and the earth is still here, that's going to be the same. There's only one way you acquire skill, and that's through repetition.
And Coach, that's why this is an unpopular message, but that's why not many people make it.
That's right.
Whatever field you're talking about, let's just talk about college basketball. Why are there so many high school players, but so few of them make it? Not just besides the fact that there's only a few seats available, because it's not like you've got all of them that are actually going for those seats. Right. Micah Lancaster, Coach. He's one of my favorite skill guys. And, you know, you can almost like just cut a line right down the middle of people that believe in that type of skill work and people that think that it's a gimmick or waste of time. I happen to see with some of his accountability tools, some of the game behind what he's doing. And especially with younger players, ways that I can maybe help them to connect some dots quicker. Let me get past that part. But Michael Lancaster has this video out and it's called I'm Possible Math, because that's his deal, is the I'm Possible.
I'm possible, yeah. He's a Spring Arbor. We went to the same school. We played at the same. He's nice. A Spring Arbor guy.
So you're a fan. And
no. Spring Arbor Cougar.
Well, he says you actually have an 84% chance of playing college basketball. And that throws, I mean, because most people just throw out that 3%, but he says you got to take all the kids, and first of all, not all of them really want to play anyway. And it's true. I have a lot of players on my team. They would not raise their hand to that question. So you take them out, that number goes up the percentage. And then out of the ones that say that they actually want to do it, how many of them have a plan and are willing to, like you just said, actually execute that plan and stick through the monotony and the boring times? That brings that number even or higher, because even less of the ones that say they want to do it are actually going to do the work necessary. Yep. And so that 84% chance, like that to me, that's the legit math. But it all goes back to, Coach, the fact that one of my least favorite things I hear from parents or players is this idea of burnout. Like I understand what they mean by burnout, but I don't think it's real or an excuse to stop working towards something that you say you really want. Right. Because burnout is natural in anything. I love mint chocolate chip ice cream. If I had it every night, that sounds pretty darn good. Physically, I'd fall apart, but I would love to do that. But at some point, Coach, maybe a week or 2, 3 weeks of eating it every night, I'm a little tired of that. Like I want something different.
You want to change.
And in that moment, Coach, I got to figure out, how much do I love mint chocolate chip ice cream? Do I love it enough to continue to push through that feeling? So I don't like the excuse of why somebody's not willing to work towards something that use of burnout or whatever it is. You gotta be careful with, I was called to do something different. Were you really? Because maybe that's true. Or was it just too much for you, too hard? You were done with it and you want to do something else.
Yep.
I think it's hard to become great at anything. I don't care what it is, but it requires that sacrifice, the ability to master the boring, like Ray Allen said, right?
Yes. And again, to me, the root of all of that, the underpinning of all of that what we're talking about now, that gets you in the gym, that gets you to develop a high tolerance for monotony, repetition, to have the discipline to get in and do the reps, you have to love it. If you don't love it, I know Coach Izzo in his staff room, meeting room, he's got a phrase up there. He's got like it, love it, live it.
Yeah.
And he talks about, he said, at one point he said, we had a lot of guys in the like it category, maybe a few in the love it. I don't know if we have enough, maybe one or two in the live it. And now we're getting more, so every year he and his staff, and I'm not in on those meetings, obviously, but they talk about how many guys just like it, how many guys love it, and then how many guys live it. And if you're in that love it to live it area, you're going to relentlessly pursue something that, again, there's so many examples that we can use but again, you think of somebody that loves music and they just relentlessly play their instrument and they, continue to evolve and take lessons and create new things. You think of a writer, people who are aspiring writers, before they even hit it, they are writing constantly. They're writing journals, they're writing articles, they're writing things that never get published. They're working on their craft. We can just go through, all areas of life. People who love something are going to pursue it passionately and relentlessly. Do you need periodic breaks? Certainly. And only the person knows what that is. It might be a day. It might be 2 days. Occasionally, it might be a week. After, let's say, 6 months, 4 months of just battering. Some kid might say, look, I need a week away. That's fine.
Yeah. Steve Kerr took 6 weeks. He was like, the NBA season was so much. I needed 6 weeks of just nothing. Yep.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I can't imagine the grind of 82 games and the travel and all that. But at some point, he's back in that gym.
Yep.
He's working on his craft. He's thinking about what's next. What can I do better? How can I improve? How can I evolve? And I firmly believe, I've never talked with him, but I firmly believe watching him play, I think it's his love for the game.
Yeah.
I think it's his love for what he's doing. Yeah. And I think if we love anything, we're going to pursue it with passion. We're going to be relentless in trying to develop ourselves in those things. And I just think that's a byproduct of love. I think love is so powerful, and I think it conquers all.
Coach, I think you've really just brought it all the way back. Our talk to the very beginning, that's cool, is, I lived it. I've made a ton of mistakes in my life. Like Coach, my 20s were a mess. I call them the dark years. Before I met my wife, those were tough years. But before that, with basketball, I have no regrets. And so living it, I think, allowed me to do it. But when I got to college, I was blown away at the amount of college players that just liked it. They were athletic enough. They had some natural ability. But Coach, living it allowed me to steal time from them.
Yes.
And but not always. But going back to, so now I love that. I love that. I've heard that phrase before, the like it, love it, live it. Going back to being a high school coach, obviously there's some schools like in this Dallas-Fort Worth area, Duncanville. I mean, all the varsity players there are going to be college players. There better be a level of at least love it to be able to even make it there. But at my level, Coach, I've got a lot of dudes that just like it. And I think here's the challenge for us as coaches. It goes back to the relationship piece that you talked about at the very beginning, is we got to know where they are on that scale And we got to be okay with where they are on that scale.
Yes.
Because the kid that's
Great
12th
point.
on my bench that just likes it, wants to be a part of it, that gives his very, very best, but has no aspirations beyond, doesn't even think about basketball when he leaves. I've got to love and care about that guy and coach him the same way as I do as maybe my best player that I think loves it. Maybe there's a glimpse of live it, kind of like, Coach, I think that's difficult for a lot of us. But
yes.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing on that, and this is where, again, and we can wrap up with this if you want, because I don't want dinner to get cold. I don't want you to miss family time. But honestly, we've got to have a bigger picture in mind, Matt. And again, what did Coach Meyer, the great Coach Meyer, I'm going to quote again, you have to have an overriding purpose for why you coach. And what you've just talked about there, you want every play in your as much as you're going to challenge them and hold them accountable and try to help them be better and help your team be as good as it can be. I think a duality of your purpose, you also want to impact a life, and you want to impact lives in a positive way. You want that 12th guy, number one, to feel valued, number one, to feel a part of something special, and number three, to learn life lessons from the time with you and your program that will carry him into the challenges and opportunities that he will face down the road. And if you're doing that, Matt, and if all of us are doing, I don't care what level we're at,
Right.
If we're doing that, we're doing something very special. And that's part of the sacred journey. I call it the sacred journey of being a coach. There's some very hard things. There's some very challenging things. There's some, you get some of the, you get adulation, sometimes undeservedly so. You get criticism, sometimes undeservedly so. But we get all of these things. But the part of the sacred journey is that you're impacting a life. You're saying words every day that I can remember my grade school. I remember the first coaches I ever had all the way through my college coach. I remember specific things they said to me, and the impact of those words and how powerful they were, and how I carried many of those things through much of my life so far. And that's a very incredibly, incredibly valuable perch that you're on. And it's a very powerful perch, and one we need not take lightly. It's so important to recognize. So in addition to, yes, I want to open the gym, and I want guys in there shooting and getting better, and I want guys who are hardcore. Yes, all of that. Of course, but through the vehicle of basketball, you're teaching life lessons that are going to go far beyond basketball and far beyond if these kids ever play. And I'm going to give you something at West Point that stuck with me for all these years. I worked at West Point from 1983 to 86, made an incredible, indelible impression on my life in so many ways. But there was a quote by Douglas MacArthur that I'll never forget. Upon the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds that upon other fields, on other days, will bear the fruits of victory. And what you're doing right now, what you just described, is exactly that upon the fields of friendly strife, high school basketball, college basketball, whatever our arena is, we're sowing seeds that will bear fruit on other days that we hope will bear the fruits of victory. These young men are going to be better fathers, better husbands, better community members, better sons. Our players are going to be better, with their families and their community people. That's our overriding mission. And if we're doing that, you're a champion. I don't care what the scoreboard says. You're a champion.
The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
Coach, before I let you go, the speed round. All right, these are going to be quick questions.
All right.
A lot of people have listened to you before and think they know you, but now we really will.
All right.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Coffee.
Nice. Great. And you've coached men and women, which we didn't even get into that, which is, but it's amazing. We had an amazing talk.
Another call.
Part two? You're saying there's a part two? All right.
Another call.
Greatest shooter of all time.
Oh, gee. Well, that I've coached or that I've seen?
All time.
Oh, it's got to be Steph.
Yeah.
It's got to be Steph. I mean, there are so many. I mean, you could go Ray Allen, you could go, but Steph, I can't ever go against Steph.
Yeah. Best basketball movie of all time.
Oh, I'm gonna tell you, I really liked Hoosiers. I loved Hoosiers, but I'm gonna tell you, Glory Road gives me a little bit of an edge. Glory Road. Now I'll tell you another one that I like back in the day that no one on this call will remember. One-on-one, but that's going to be that's
Coach,
not in the category Glory Road.
I want to let you know though, you are not the only person that's mentioned that one.
Okay.
And I still, what's the whole title again?
It's just One-on-One was all I knew it as.
Okay.
It was Robbie Benson.
That's it. Yeah, Robbie Benson. Yeah. I haven't watched it yet, and it's on my list of things to do because
you need to. But it does. Glory Road to me is that. Yeah. Glory Road.
That's a good one. Texting or talking?
Oh, talking.
I'm in Dallas-Fort Worth, in Texas, where there's no shot clock for high schools. For high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
Shot clock. Absolutely. 100% all for it.
Favorite holiday?
Oh, Christmas.
You're up 3 on defense with 7 seconds left. Do you foul or no foul?
Oh. You know what? I typically have not as a head coach, and it's worked out both ways. I know that's too long, but I'm going to say
it's okay.
I don't, but I probably will live to regret that. As
an assistant coach, do you ever sit there going like, "Oh, we should do this right now"? You're thinking that, and but I don't know. Oh, yeah. Oh, you guys assistant all the time. But, I've been a head coach, so I know how that is. It's very easy to sit there and say, give a suggestion, and then afterwards say, Coach, I told you to foul. I do it.
Yeah, exactly. I've had that done to me. Yeah.
This one's going to be hard for you. What book would you give someone?
I I'll tell you, for a coach, I'm trying to think of it. Lead for God's Sake.
Yeah, that one's come up a bunch.
Lead for God's Sake. That would be the one for me. Other
more.
than the Bible, obviously. Yes, I'm very.
I always feel like I should. Yeah, we'll take that one off. And then...
Yes, because I don't want somebody to just say I'm jamming a Bible in your face, But that to me is the ultimate book. But if you're saying a good book for coaches to read right now, Lead for God's Sake.
Yeah. But go through Proverbs, though. Golly, talk about leadership lessons and things. I mean, there's a lot we can take from that. Yeah,
the coaching wisdom in Proverbs is unbelievable.
Yeah, I always thought that too. Like Jesus did an amazing job of building a team. Oh, like, think of what he did with those 12 individuals and how it reshaped the world. 12 people. And they were so different. Anyway, yes. Sorry. Name a bucket list item you still need to do.
I'm not a big bucket list guy, but I will say this. I want to go. There's certain areas, like I want to go explore the Gulf Coast of Florida and just drive from little town to little town and just hit beach to beach to beach and just be completely anonymous and just go down there and just be like a traveling tourist and hit the Gulf side. I love the Gulf side of Florida.
That's cool. Last one. In basketball, as far as a player goes, who is the GOAT?
Got to go Michael. I'm sorry. I got to go Michael. There's so many. I mean, again, I don't think that's ever a question that you can really answer.
No, there's no wrong or right. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you sit there and go, Wilt, Kareem, and all that. But I'm going to tell you, I will never, ever go against seeing what he did. Can't go against Michael.
Yeah. Coach, this was, you gave me over 2 hours of your time. So enjoyable to get to learn more about you and to listen. And you mentioned something about, Joe Ehrman?
Yeah, Joe Ehrman, EHRMANN.
Joe Ehrman's book and the idea of being transactional and transformational. I just felt like it was one of the most transformational talks that I've been able to be a part of. And I just really appreciate you. Honored to have this time with you, Coach.
Well, thank you very much, Matt. This was a pleasure. I love talking the game. I love talking bigger things than the game with people who love the game, and you obviously do. And so it was an honor and a pleasure. And thank you for having me.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.